Hi everyone, my name is Reema Islam, and this is my first assignment for this wonderful 6 month internship that we've all started. And my topic for the first month was I've already submitted the document, and this is the presentation for it, which is Carob as a product of cultural and heritage significance. Um, Basically, I've worked a lot in the development sector, and then I finally went to Greece to do my master's in heritage management. And this presentation is actually part of my master's dissertation, which was on this very same topic, Carob as a product of cultural and heritage significance. I was in Greece for about 2 years, and during those 2 years, I was based in Crete for about a year, and I worked on this amazing product called the Carob. So, for some of you that are not familiar with this, it probably looks like a vanilla pod, and for some of you that are from my part of the world, which is the Southeast Asian region, you might think this is a tamarind, and obviously these are all bean pods. And the carob is actually, when I first arrived in Greece, a friend of mine brought it in class one day as a dessert. And I thought, oh my God, this is so delicious. But then I went back home and I read up on its history, and I was absolutely bowled over by what I'd seen because, the carob is not just. The carob is okay, so it's known as the harupi in Greek, and I think in Arabic also it's known as the harubi because the Arab alphabet does not have the letter P. And the scientific name is Keratonia silica, which is also a Greek name. And the most interesting part of this bean pod was that in the ancient times, each seed, even today, not just in the ancient times, but each of the seeds, they weigh about 200 milligrams. So in the ancient times, each seed was used to weigh gemstones. And that's where we get the word carat from. So, 24 carat gold, 18 carat diamond, whatever it is, they're all derived from the term Keratonia silica. And this was really interesting for me because I obviously didn't know about that until I went there and I actually ate it. And the funny thing, of course, was the fact that, even though I thought it was just an amazing product, a lot of Greeks themselves are not familiar with the carob. Of course, they know what the harupi is. They see it and they say, oh, yes, of course, I know what this is. But they actually don't really know what the significance of this plant is. It's basically an endemic to the Mediterranean region, which means that it is also available in Egypt, in Syria, Lebanon, in, Libya, which is where I was born. I don't really remember eating it as a child though, but I know that it's found there. In Greece, it is mainly found in Crete, which is an island that is obviously closer to the North African part of the Mediterranean. Um, this has been documented it's been documented that this tree has been around for almost 4,000 years now. The other thing was that the carob has been mentioned in a lot of literature. It's even there in the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's been mentioned by a lot of very religious, famous religious characters like Saint John the Baptist, who most probably used this to term the locust and wild honey. So he spoke about surviving on locusts and wild honey in the desert, and we have a feeling that he probably spoke about the carob. Now, a lot of the other things listed in this list are, the fact that the carob helps you against dysentery, especially for children, prevents coughs, blah, blah, blah. All of these points are what I derived from my talks or through my discussion with the locals in Crete. And at the end of each slide, you're going to see a very big but, which I'm going to, of course, address in my later slides. Now, you may ask, what was all this about? Why was I so fixated upon the carob, and what was I actually going to do with it? But before I go on, I have another slide on how much of an amazing plant this is. The carob is actually a superfood, so it has twice the calcium than cocoa, in fact. It has a lot of antioxidants. It is gluten free. It's actually used in a lot of other things which we ourselves are unaware of, like it is a fragrance also, it is a texture enhancer. There are a lot of other ways that carob is used, but it has such an understated image that a lot of people are unaware of it, are unaware of actually consuming carob in their everyday life. Back to the but. So, what was I going to do with it? I have this amazingly brilliant product in my hands and I want to do a master's dissertation on this, but I don't know what to do with it. So, there is a list of intangible heritage that UNESCO comes up with every year, and they have a lot of inclusions every year in it, and food is a very big part of that list. So, from Greece specifically, there were two major things that were entered in that list. One was on the top left corner of the slide. You can see that these are the mastika. So these are actually gum resins, and this is the dried mastika. And this is actually found on the island of Chios in Greece, and you can see the tear. It looks like a little teardrop. This comes out of the tree. It's a gum resin. It's a sap. And so the mastika is one product from Greece, and the other was the Mediterranean diet. And in fact, last year in 2018, or I know, I'm sorry, it was in 2017 that the dolmades from Azerbaijan was actually included in this list. So this is just to give you an idea of the different kinds of things that are included in this list. But in case you're interested and you want to go online and you want to know more about this list, you can go on and you can check out the Intangible Cultural Heritage website on UNESCO. They have a huge list, and they have a lot of other criteria that they use for choosing certain foods or certain other items on this list. Now my whole idea was to basically present this to present carob as a product of cultural and heritage significance, from Greece, of course. And the fact that the carob had a very understated image, and it was not very talked about, or it was not very highlighted in many ways, was something that was going to be my biggest challenge. And this is the challenge that I faced when I went to Crete, because, like I told you, I thought I had this amazing product, and even though I'd seen how the Greeks in Athens had responded to it, because they hardly knew what it was, I thought I'd have better luck in Crete. I thought people in Crete would be like, "Oh my God, you're here to work on the carob, yay!" Thank you. But it was far from the reality. And when I arrived in Crete, I realized that carob actually suffers from an even worse image in Crete, because in the Second World War, people didn't really have anything to eat, and carob was one of the things they survived on. So they actually have they associate it with a very negative connotation, which was, one of the biggest challenges that I faced there while I was talking to the people. Nonetheless, I decided, to go ahead and look at all the other aspects that I can work on. And of course, I realized that carob not only was used as something, as a consumable item, but it was used for many other purposes. And eventually, people, its trade died out because the carob was replaced by other products. The Cretans the EU pumped some funds in the early 1990s, and most people in Crete converted their farmlands from carob trees, and they went into vineyards, grape vineyards, and they had olive trees. So now, if you go to Crete, all you see are olives, 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 and grapes, grapes, grapes. But this is, according to the Cretans, this was not how the natural landscape always looked like. These are mostly planted. So that's another reason why the carob started to be seen less. There was another problem where the carob, I think in one of my slides I've mentioned that it was used. It's very versatile. You can make dough out of it. Like you can see here, this is a pasta, and this is a bread. And so you can make dough out of it, because if you make dough, then you can make all sorts of things. You can make cakes. You can make pastas out of it. You can, the dough, the carob syrup is used for a lot of other things. There are a lot of consumable products that you can make out of the carob, out of the harupi. But unfortunately, other than just the bread and the syrup, there were very few innovations in the market which allowed people to actually explore more things they can do with the carob. And the last and the most, I think, the most crushing defeat that the carob has ever faced, or is facing currently, was the fact that the carob is used to feed livestock, which means it is sold at a very cheap price. So even if a lot of farmers have carobs on their farms, what they'll do is they'll sell it at a very cheap price, which means that the value of the carob tree is even more sort of demerited. Now, I took all of these problems and I started working with a local organization called Emenidis, which was based in Crete. And we basically filled out the first initial form, which we needed to submit to the Directorate of Modern Cultural Heritage under the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and Sports. And this list is basically, we were nominated, the carob was nominated among 22 other products from all over Greece, and I'm sorry, 18 other products. I keep making that mistake. 18 other products from all over Greece, and we were one of the Carob was in this list, and which means that it was initially nominated, and now we had to keep working on it. We had to increase more, know-how amongst the people on what they can do with the carob and on how we can promote it. So once the carob was in this list, obviously, the rest of the country woke up to this amazing product, and it received a lot of media attention, a lot of focus, and it started coming out in the newspapers. This is Rethymniotika Nea, which is a Cretan newspaper. It was not just in Crete, but all over Greece. It was actually very heavily it was promoted. Finally, we organized a workshop, a seminar, and we invited a lot of people from all over Crete to come and talk about how the Carob has actually influenced the local culture, and a lot of interesting things came up where people spoke about nostalgic stories were shared. A lot of people came up with all sorts of ways that they've used the Carob. The local jail authorities actually spoke about how they shared how the Carob is grown in their grounds and how they plan to do things with it. And there were more potential expansion opportunities came up where a lot of farmers had come to the seminar just to learn about how they can actually improve their carob farming. Academics came to talk about what else they can do. Local manufacturers showed up. Finally, before I end my presentation, which is about to end it, is the fact that once these seminars were done, of course, there was a lot of noise that was raised for the carob. Eventually, the carob was not chosen in the UNESCO list. It was not chosen in the national inventory either. But the fact remains that it created a lot of noise. It created a lot of interest. It is a product which is underrated, which is not being promoted very properly, and that was the first step towards helping it, gain just that initial bit of recognition that it deserves. And while I was, after all the work that I did with this product, I came up with a few very important aspects which I think need to be focused upon in order to help Carob, on its journey. One of the main things is to look at the marketing policies because, Greece does not have marketing policies for Carob specifically like they do for olives, like they do for the grapes. They don't have policies which are helpful for the farmers, giving them any kind of an incentive to grow carob or to continue growing carob. The agricultural practices are not streamlined, so even harvesting is a very one-off, activity where there are not the people that go to collect the carobs are not trained specifically for this task. So you have ad hoc laborers coming in, daily laborers coming in to do this job. Nothing is streamlined basically. Like I said, there are not a lot of innovations. This picture that I'm showing here, this is one of the only local organizations called Crete Carob, which was actually responsible for selling locally sourced carobs in a lot of different variations. So you have they make pasta, they make bread, they make syrups, they make all sorts of things out of carobs, and even soaps, and a lot of innovations. And they're probably the only company that actually uses locally sourced carobs, and they've actually done something to promote the many ways we can use carobs. Um, of course, this goes into promotions again because if you already have a company that's doing this kind of work, it should, I mean, theoretically speaking, this should be easier for people to actually promote how else you can use carob. You can have interesting cultural events, you can do all sorts of things with it. You can go towards an improved image for the carob, in fact. Um, but one of the other things which I must add towards the end is the fact that the noise that was created went on to culminate into yet another seminar which was held this year, sometime in May, and it was organized by the same organization. And they had another seminar on carob, but I think they mostly focused on the scientific purposes, the scientific, uses of the carob, a lot of academic work that's gone into the carob. Although I believe that they didn't focus as much on how it can actually influence the culture and how it's actually contributed towards, influencing the eating habits or the culinary culture of Crete. The fact remains that any aspect which is highlighted, whether it's scientific, whether it's the cultural aspect, the carob is getting its due recognition, its due promotion, And I think that all contributes to the eventual the pathway that the Carob has now, I think it's finally on its way to becoming, to, gaining this recognition which was so needed. Because a lot of people, even if a lot of people knew what it is worth, this was not something which had a voice. And I think these kind of small initiatives, these seminars, these workshops, if they're more regular, if they're done on a more regular basis, then this is a start for something, for a whole pan Mediterranean sort of movement towards promoting the Carob, which is something that is endemic to that region. And I end my presentation with this really interesting picture which someone shared with me. This is from, I think this is from the 1920s. And this picture is from Cyprus. And donkeys back in the day were used to transport carobs. And this donkey's actually carrying carobs on its back. But he's carrying carobs and then he's being carried on a ship. I'm not sure why. But this was a very interesting picture someone shared with me. And thank you very much. I would love to hear feedback or any questions that you might have in terms of the Carob. I wish I could share more, because there's so much more that I feel is lacking in this presentation, because there's so much more I'd like to talk about, so many other aspects that I'd like to discuss, but this was just a small beginning from my end, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much.